This is my true story. I lost my wife in 1975, and life never felt the same after that. We were young, poor, and trying to build something small but ours. Then one rainy night, she drove out to get bread and milk, and never came home. They said her car slid off the old bridge outside town. I never remarried. I still live in the same house, eat at the same table, and talk to her photo before I sleep. But last month, at 11:47 p.m., the phone rang, and it was her voice. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And please subscribe so my story can reach more people. It was the kind of night the whole town still remembers. Heavy rain, no moon, no sound except thunder and the wind hitting the trees. In 1975, the roads in our part of the state were rough, narrow, cracked, and always flooding near the bridge. I told her not to go out that night. We didn't need the groceries. We could have waited till morning. But she smiled, said she'd be quick, and kissed my cheek. She always believed bad things only happened to other people. I watched her step out in that yellow raincoat, holding her small black purse, her hair tied up with a red ribbon. She looked back once, waved, and shut the car door. The sound of that door closing still echoes in my head every time it rains. She drove the old blue Chevy, the one we bought secondhand the summer we got married. I stood by the window, watching the taillights disappear down the road until I couldn't see them anymore. Then the silence came, a kind of silence that doesn't sit on the air, it sits on your chest. I waited. 10 minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. I told myself maybe she stopped by her sister's place. Maybe the road was flooded. Maybe she was just waiting out the storm. Every excuse felt like hope, and every minute felt longer than the last. Around midnight, I called the police station. The officer who answered knew me by name. That's how small our town was. He said the storm had washed out part of the bridge and a car might have gone over. My hand went cold. I remember dropping the phone, bending to pick it up, and hearing my own breathing louder than the thunder. They told me to stay home, that they'd call me when they knew something. I didn't stay home. I drove there. I don't even remember starting the truck. I just remember the headlights slicing through the rain and the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. When I reached the bridge, red and blue lights flashed everywhere. Police cars, fire trucks, men in raincoats holding flashlights. The water below looked black and violent, waves crashing against the broken guardrail. I saw the car first, half sunk, twisted metal shining under the lights. It was hers. The door was open, the windshield cracked, the radio still faintly playing through the static. A rescue worker pulled something from the mud, her scarf, red, soaked, torn on one side. Then someone else held up a small gold ring, her wedding band. I knew it before they said anything. My knees gave out. I fell in the mud and couldn't move. One of the officers helped me stand, but I don't remember his face. I just remember the taste of rain and metal and heartbreak. They searched for her all night. Boats, flashlights, ropes, nothing. The next morning, the sheriff came to my porch with his hat in his hands. He said they'd keep looking, but it was likely the current took her far downstream. The river ran all the way to the next county, and sometimes bodies never turned up. I didn't hear the rest. His lips kept moving, but the world had gone quiet. I signed some papers. I think he said something about closure. There's no such thing. For weeks after, I drove back to that bridge every evening. The county fixed the rail, replaced the missing boards, painted over the stains, but I saw her there every time. Sometimes I'd imagine the sound of her car engine echoing through the fog. Other times, I'd swear I heard her humming, the same song she used to hum when she cooked dinner. I stayed until the headlights from other cars made me leave. Then I'd drive home to an empty house, 2 plates on the table, 1 untouched. Everyone told me to move on. Her sister said I was torturing myself. My pastor said God had called her home. But deep down, I didn't believe it. Not because I couldn't accept death, but because something about that night never felt right. Her seatbelt was still buckled when they found the car. The driver's side window was rolled up. The keys were still in the ignition. If the car slid, she should have been inside. But she wasn't. She was gone, just gone, like she vanished into thin air. I told myself 1,000 stories to make sense of it. Maybe someone stopped to help her. Maybe she walked away in the dark. Maybe the river never took her at all. Every answer hurt, but none felt true. That night became my prison. Every storm since then feels like her knocking on the window, trying to tell me something I can't hear. And I still wonder if I should have stopped her, held her hand, and said, "Stay home tonight." Because maybe if I had, I wouldn't still be talking to her ghost 50 years later. After the accident, the house became too quiet. It didn't feel like home anymore, just a box full of sounds that belonged to her. The floorboards still creaked in the same places. The smell of her perfume still floated in the air every time I opened her closet. Her shoes stayed by the door, side by side, like she'd be back any minute to put them on. I couldn't move them. I couldn't move anything. For years, everything in that house stayed where she left it. People called it strange, but it was the only way I could still feel her near me. Every morning, I still made 2 cups of tea. One for me, one for her. Hers always sat untouched, steam fading slow until it turned cold. It was a habit I couldn't break. I'd place the cup next to her photo on the kitchen table and whisper a few words, even when I knew no one was listening. Sometimes I talked about the weather. Sometimes I told her what the neighbors were doing. Sometimes I just said, "I miss you." Days turned into months. Months turned into years. Life in our small town moved on like the river, steady and uncaring. The grocery store changed owners. The old diner on Main Street shut down. Kids I once saw playing in the park grew up and left. Everyone aged around me, but inside, I stayed in 1975. Every morning felt like the day after she disappeared, heavy, cold, and unfinished. My son was still in high school when it happened. He used to ask about his mother at first. Then he stopped. I think he got tired of watching me talk to someone who wasn't there. When he turned 18, he said he wanted to go to California for work. He promised to write. He didn't. That was 40 years ago. I can't blame him. Maybe it was too hard to stay in a house that felt like a grave. I kept working for a while, fixing fences and doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. People were kind, but kindness fades when grief doesn't. They stopped asking how I was because they already knew the answer. After I retired, the days got even longer. Morning coffee, small breakfast, walk to the mailbox, silence. The landline barely rang anymore, just wrong numbers and telemarketers. I never got rid of it. It was the same number we'd had since the 70s, and sometimes I'd pick up the receiver just to hear the dial tone. It was the only steady sound left in my world. The seasons became markers of time I didn't want. Spring brought back her garden, the one she loved, tulips, lilacs, wildflowers. I tried to keep it alive, but they never bloomed the way they used to. Summer brought thunder, and thunder brought memories. Every storm sounded like the night I lost her. Autumn covered the porch in dry leaves that I never swept, and winter was the hardest. That's when the house felt smaller, darker, more hollow. At night, I couldn't sleep. I'd sit in the living room with the TV on mute, watching the glow of the screen reflect off her picture frame. Sometimes I thought I heard her humming down the hallway. Once, I woke up to the sound of footsteps on the stairs. I called out her name. No answer. Just the old house breathing in the cold. People say when you live alone too long, you start to hear what you miss. I believe that. There were days I thought about leaving, selling the house, moving closer to town. But every time I packed a box, I stopped halfway. Everything in that place was part of her. The paint she picked, the curtains she sewed, the dent on the wall from where we dropped the Christmas tree one year. Leaving would have felt like erasing her. So I stayed. The world kept changing outside, but inside, nothing did. When you lose someone that way, time doesn't heal. It freezes. Every day is the same photograph repeating. You forget what laughter sounds like, what warmth feels like, what it means to make plans. You just exist between breakfast and sleep, hoping the next morning will feel a little less empty. It never does. I didn't know then that my story wasn't finished, that one night, decades later, the phone I never used would ring again, and the voice I thought I'd lost forever would come back to me, soft and calm, from somewhere that should have been impossible. 48 years is a long time to live with silence. Most people can't even imagine what half a century alone feels like. It doesn't hurt every day, not in the way you'd expect. It's quieter than that. It's a soft ache that never leaves, like a low hum inside your chest. After the first 10 years, people stopped asking about her. After 20, even the memories began to fade from other people's minds. But not from mine. I remembered everything. The way she folded her sleeves, the smell of her shampoo, the sound of her voice when she said my name. All of it stayed clear as daylight, even when everything else around me blurred with age. The town changed while I stayed the same. New faces moved in, new stores opened, and the small diner where we had our first date turned into a car wash. The grocery store where she used to buy milk got torn down, and they built a bank in its place. Sometimes I'd drive by, just to remember how it looked before. The world kept moving forward, but I stayed where she left me. People my age either died or moved to nursing homes. I refused to go. I told the social worker that if I had to die, I'd die in my own chair, in my own house, surrounded by what little was left of the life I built. The landline sat on the table beside her photo. It was the same old beige telephone we bought in the 70s. It had a cord that curled and twisted, and it still worked, though no one ever called. Every time I dusted the shelf, I wiped it clean too. It was habit, part of my routine. Morning tea, short walk, check the mail, clean the phone. I didn't even realize how much I was waiting for something that wasn't supposed to come. Some nights, I sat on the porch and listened to the crickets. The air would be still, the sky full of stars, and I'd imagine her sitting beside me, humming the same old country tune she loved. I used to talk to her then. Not loud, just soft enough for myself. I'd say things like, "You'd like how the trees look this year," or "The Henderson boy finally fixed that old truck," or "You should see the neighbor's dog. He chews everything." It sounds foolish, I know, talking to someone who's been gone almost 50 years. But when you love someone that long, death doesn't really stop the conversation. It just changes the way it sounds. My hands grew weaker. My eyesight faded. The doctor told me to start wearing hearing aids, but I didn't. I didn't want the noise of the world coming back. The silence had become my company. The only sound I liked hearing was the ticking of the wall clock and the birds that landed on the fence outside. My life had shrunk to small things: tea, old photos, a rocking chair, the faint smell of dust and memory. But it wasn't sadness anymore. It was just stillness. Like time itself had accepted that I wasn't leaving. On rainy nights, the thunder always brought me back to 1975. The sound of it hitting the roof made my heart race. I'd sit in the dark, holding her photo, waiting for it to pass. I used to think storms carried her voice. The wind through the trees sometimes sounded like her whispering my name. I never told anyone that. People would have said I'd gone senile. But maybe grief just opens a part of you that the living can't understand. The few people who visited always said the same thing. You should move closer to your son, or you need company. They didn't understand that my company had never left. She was in the smell of the curtains, the shape of the pillow beside mine, the sound of the screen door creaking when the wind blew. She was everywhere and nowhere all at once. Years passed like that. Birthdays, winters, summers, all blending together. Sometimes I'd forget the date until the mailman wished me happy holidays. I kept the radio by my chair, but I rarely turned it on. The world outside was loud and fast, full of things I didn't recognize anymore. Phones without cords, music without melody, people always in a hurry. But inside this house, nothing changed. I liked it that way. I thought the story was over, that my life would end in the same quiet way it had gone on. But one night, the silence broke. I was half asleep in my chair when the landline, that old beige phone no one had called in decades, began to ring. At first I thought it was a dream. The sound was strange, foreign, like hearing your own name in a crowded room. It rang 3 times before I picked it up. My hand shook. And when I lifted it to my ear, a woman's voice said my name, the way only she ever did. It happened on a Wednesday night. The sky outside was dark, no wind, no thunder, no reason for anything to feel different. I had fallen asleep in my chair by the window, the TV still on mute. The only light in the room came from the small lamp beside her photo. I don't know what woke me, maybe a sound, maybe a feeling. But when I opened my eyes, the landline on the table was ringing. I almost didn't recognize the sound. It had been years since I heard it. Decades, maybe. The ring was sharp, steady, the same tone from long ago. The one she used to pick up when friends called. I stared at it for a few seconds, too confused to move. Then it rang again. I reached out and lifted the receiver slowly. My heart was beating hard. My hand was shaking. I pressed the phone to my ear and said hello. At first, there was nothing. No voice, no static, just quiet. Then, faintly, I heard breathing. Soft, slow breathing. I thought maybe it was a wrong number, or maybe some kid playing a prank. I was about to hang up when I heard it. My name. Spoken in a whisper. The same way she used to say it when she wanted my attention but didn't want to wake our son. I froze. It wasn't just a voice. It was her voice. The tone, the rhythm, even the small quiver at the end. After 48 years, I still knew it instantly. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My mouth went dry, my body cold. She said my name again, a little louder this time, as if testing whether I could hear her. I wanted to answer, but fear held my throat shut. Then she spoke one more word. It's me. Just those two words, plain and calm, like no time had passed. My fingers gripped the receiver so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't even realize I was standing until I looked down and saw the chair pushed back behind me. I asked who it was, even though I already knew. The line cracked slightly, but her voice came through clear. "Don't be scared," she said. "I've missed you." My knees weakened. I sat down slowly, still holding the phone. I didn't know what to say. For years I had dreamed of hearing her again, but not like this. Not from a voice that shouldn't exist. I whispered, "Where are you?" And then there was silence. A long, heavy silence that stretched so far, I thought maybe the call had dropped. Then she said something that made my whole body tremble. "I never died." For a moment the world tilted. I felt dizzy, sick, confused. I thought maybe I misheard, but she said it again, slower this time. "I never died." My eyes filled with tears. My mind couldn't catch up with what my ears were hearing. I had buried her in my heart 50 years ago. I had lived half my life as a widower. Now a voice from that grave was telling me it was all a lie. I tried to ask questions, but my voice cracked too much. I could only manage small sounds. Her name, the word how, the word why. She didn't answer right away. I heard her breathing, soft, steady, human. Not ghostly, not distant, real. It was the kind of breathing you hear when someone is alive on the other side of the line. My head spun. The clock on the wall ticked loud. The air in the room felt heavy. Every second that passed felt like a minute. Then, faintly, she whispered, "I'm sorry." Just that. I didn't ask what for. I didn't have to. I could feel the truth behind it, hiding in that voice I knew too well. The line crackled again. I heard what sounded like traffic in the background, cars passing, distant noise. That was when I realized the call wasn't coming from heaven or memory or imagination. It was coming from somewhere real, somewhere on this earth. I whispered her name again, hoping she'd keep talking, hoping this wasn't another kind of cruel dream. But before she could say anything more, the line cut off. One sharp click, then silence. I held the receiver to my ear for a long time, listening to the dead line hum. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, an old man holding a phone, waiting for a voice that wasn't supposed to exist. The clock said 11:47 p.m. when it started. It was past midnight when I finally set the phone down. I stared at it for a long time, half expecting it to ring again. It didn't. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window until the sun came up, The empty road outside glowing with early light. Every shadow looked like a memory. Every sound felt like a ghost. I wasn't sure if I was losing my mind, or if she had just come back to finish a story I never knew was still being written. When the phone rang again the next night, I didn't hesitate. I was already sitting in the chair, staring at it, waiting. I had told myself it was a dream, or maybe the wind in the wires, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. You can't mistake a voice like that. I lifted the receiver before the second ring finished and whispered hello. For a moment, nothing. Then came the same slow breathing, quiet and steady. My chest tightened. I said her name softly, afraid that if I said it too loud, she'd disappear again. And then she answered. It's me. The same tone, the same rhythm, the same warmth I had lived without for half a century. It felt like time folded in half and all those empty years were gone in a blink. I wanted to speak, but words didn't come. My throat locked. I could only listen. She said my name again, just once, and I could hear the faintest smile in it. The way she used to sound when she'd come home from work and find me fixing the radio or reading the paper. That small, familiar comfort came rushing back, but right behind it was fear. Because I knew she couldn't be calling. She couldn't be alive. I buried her in my heart 50 years ago. I had cried over that bridge, prayed by that water, watched the men pull her car from the river. And yet, here she was, or at least her voice was. I finally managed to whisper, "Where are you?" The line cracked, faint static crawling like dust through the silence. Then she said, "I'm here." I asked again, but she didn't answer the way I wanted. She didn't say a place, a town, a name, just, "I'm here." The words came out slow, careful, almost like she was choosing each one. I could hear cars in the background, faint and distant, like a road somewhere far away. Not traffic like the city, more like a highway at night, when only a few trucks pass. My heart sank deeper with every second. I said, "This isn't possible." She didn't argue. She just said, "I know." Then she paused. I could hear her breathing again, soft, uneven this time, like someone trying not to cry. The sound of her breath hit me harder than any storm I'd ever lived through. I didn't need proof she was alive. That breath was enough. I gripped the phone tighter, afraid to lose even that. She said my name again, and then, "I'm sorry." My hand shook so bad I had to switch the receiver to the other ear. I wanted to ask for what? I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to tell her what her death had done to me. But instead, I sat there, quiet, my old heart pounding against my ribs. I realized that even after all those years, part of me didn't want to hurt her. Part of me still loved her. And that hurt most of all. Then she said something that made me stop breathing. I never died. I remember the exact sound of it, every letter, every pause. My mouth opened, but no words came out. She continued, voice trembling. I was scared. "I didn't know how to tell you," I whispered. "Tell me what?" She went quiet for a moment. I could hear wind through the phone, faint like a car window half open. Then she said, "I left." Just those two words. Everything inside me went still. I didn't understand. I asked what she meant. She said, "The crash wasn't real. The storm, the car, the river, all of it." I made it look that way. I froze. She spoke again, her voice soft and tired. I needed to leave. I couldn't do it any other way. I wanted to ask why, but my voice cracked too much to speak. She kept talking, almost whispering. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." The silence that followed was long and strange. I could hear her crying, quietly, the way she used to cry when no one could see. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My tears had dried out years ago. I just sat there, holding the receiver, listening to the woman I thought I buried in the past breathe on the other end of the line. For the first time in 50 years, I didn't feel alone. And for the first time in 50 years, I wished I was. When she spoke again, her voice was different, lower, tired, almost ashamed. She said she had something to tell me, something I should have known 50 years ago. I didn't interrupt. I just listened, hand pressed to my chest, waiting. She took a deep breath that came through the line like a long sigh and said, "Back then, I wasn't honest with you." The words sat between us like smoke. She said she had met a man months before the accident, a salesman from Florida who came through town for work. "He promised me a new life," she whispered. I thought I wanted that. I could hear the crack in her voice when she said it, the sound of guilt that had waited half a century to speak. She said the crash on the bridge wasn't an accident. She planned it. The storm made it easy. The washed-out road, the broken guardrail. All she needed was to leave the car at the edge, drop her ring, her scarf, and vanish. She said she walked for miles that night in the rain until a truck stopped and gave her a ride south. "I didn't look back," she said. "I was scared if I did, I'd turn around." I felt sick listening. I remembered the days I spent standing by that river, the search boats, the sleepless nights, the prayers. All of it. For someone who was never dead. I wanted to shout, but nothing came out. My body was shaking, but my voice was gone. She kept talking, slower now, as if she was running out of courage. "I went with him to Florida," she said. "He had money, a house near the beach. I thought it was love. But it wasn't. It was a mistake that never ended." She said he drank, cheated, and left her 10 years later. After that, she lived alone. No family, no friends. Just an old woman with too many lies to carry. "When he died," she said, "I thought about calling you. But I was too ashamed." I sat there gripping the phone, staring at the photo on the wall. My wife's smile, the one I kept alive for 50 years, suddenly looked different. Every memory shifted. Every good thing turned into a question. I asked her, barely whispering, "Why now?" She paused so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she said, "Because I heard you were still alive, and still waiting." Her words hit harder than the thunder that took her away from me all those years ago. I realized she had seen my life from a distance, maybe through old friends or a phone book. Maybe she even drove by this house once. The thought made my stomach turn. She said she wasn't calling for forgiveness. "I just didn't want to die without telling you the truth." Her voice cracked when she said, "Die." I could hear the frailty in it, that trembling rasp of someone whose years are nearly done. She told me she lived in a small town outside Tampa now, that she was sick, that she didn't have anyone left. "I thought maybe you'd want to know I'm sorry," she said. I couldn't speak. My throat burned. Half of me wanted to hang up, the other half wanted to keep listening forever. She said, "You were a good man. You didn't deserve what I did." Her breathing turned rough. She coughed, whispered my name again, and then said, "I still wear the ring, the one I bought to replace the one I left." I felt something in me break. All those years I'd held on to faith, to love, to ghosts. And now the ghost was telling me she'd walked away on purpose. I asked her if she was alone. She said yes. She said the house was small, near a highway, and the only sound at night was the phone she kept beside her bed. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said softly. "I just didn't want you to think I died hating you." Then came silence again. Not the kind that feels empty, the kind that fills the room, heavy and endless. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I could do was whisper her name one more time. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I shouldn't have called. I just needed you to know." The line went quiet. I heard one small exhale, then nothing. The call ended. The dial tone returned, steady and cruel. I sat there with the receiver pressed to my ear, my body frozen, my heart pounding against years of lies. Outside, the night was still, but inside me, everything was falling apart. After the call ended, I just sat there. The phone was still in my hand, the dial tone humming like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. My legs wouldn't move. My chest felt hollow. I stared at the picture of her on the wall, the one where she's smiling by the lake, holding the red scarf that now meant nothing. For 50 years I had talked to that picture, prayed to it, kissed it goodnight. I had thought that love never dies, but love had died that night on the phone, and I didn't even know what to call what was left of me. I tried to stand, but my knees gave out. I fell back into the chair, breathing hard. The room looked different. The same walls, the same furniture, the same yellow light, but everything felt smaller, like it was closing in. I felt like I was drowning in memories that weren't even real anymore. Every good moment we ever had was now covered in dust, buried under a lie that had lived longer than she did. I thought about all the years I spent keeping her alive in my heart, all the birthdays I marked with flowers, all the anniversaries I spent alone at that bridge, all the nights I sat by the phone thinking maybe heaven could hear me, and now I knew heaven had nothing to do with it. She wasn't watching over me. She was living a life somewhere else, while I was dying slowly in the one she left behind. The thing about pain at my age is it doesn't explode. It sinks. It sits deep, steady, like a stone you can't pull out. I didn't cry. I didn't have tears left. I just sat there and let the truth pour through me, heavy and cold. The woman I mourned wasn't dead. She was just gone. And that was worse. When she said she left me for another man, something inside me didn't just break, it emptied. I kept hearing her words over and over. I never died. I made it look that way. The way she said it, so calm, like she was talking about a small mistake, not a life stolen. I remembered the sheriff's face that morning in 1975, how his eyes softened when he said, "She's gone, son." All the men who stood by me at the funeral. All the hands that shook mine. All the prayers I said over an empty grave. Every single one built on a lie. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and filled the kettle out of habit. I didn't even know why. I made 2 cups of tea, like I always did. One for me, one for her. The steam rose for a few minutes, then faded, leaving both cups cold. That small act, that little ritual of love, suddenly felt foolish. I poured hers down the sink. The sound of it splashing was louder than the rain outside. It was the sound of something ending for real this time. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty road. The world outside was still the same. Dark sky, wet pavement, the old streetlight flickering at the corner. But I wasn't the same. I had spent half a century talking to a ghost, and now even the ghost was gone. There was no comfort left in memory. Memory had turned cruel. She said she called because she was sorry. But sorry is too small a word to carry what she did. Sorry can't rebuild 50 years of silence. Sorry can't return youth, or laughter, or the sound of footsteps in the kitchen. Sorry can't give me back my life. It was just a sound on a phone line, one I would never hear again. When I closed my eyes, I could still hear her breathing through the static, the last sound before the line went dead. It haunted me more than her death ever did. Death is final. Betrayal never is. Betrayal keeps whispering long after the world goes quiet. I had always feared losing her twice. Once to death, once to time. I never knew the second one would hurt more. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to the old house creak, the wind move through the trees, and the clock ticking louder than ever. I realized that for 50 years, I wasn't waiting for her to return. I was waiting to learn the truth. And now that I finally had it, I wished I never picked up that phone. When the sun came up that morning, I hadn't slept a minute. The phone still sat on the table beside me, the cord twisted, the receiver hanging halfway off the hook. I just stared at it, waiting for it to ring again. But it didn't. The air in the room was cold. My hands were shaking, but not from the weather. It was something deeper, like my body didn't know what to do without the lie it had been living on for 50 years. I had built my life around her memory, and now that memory was gone. It was like losing her all over again, but worse, because this time, I knew she had chosen it. I stood up and looked around the house. Everything in it was hers, the curtains she picked, the dishes she liked, the pictures on the wall. Every single thing had her fingerprints on it. But now, all I saw were reminders of the truth, that she had left me, not died. I walked to her photo and stared at it for a long time. Her eyes looked kind in that picture. Too kind. I reached out and touched the glass, but it didn't feel like her anymore. It felt like a stranger pretending to be the woman I loved. I took the photo down, sat at the table, and laid it face down beside the phone. I thought maybe I'd cry then, but I didn't. My body was too tired for tears. I just sat there, breathing in the silence that filled the space where her voice had been hours before. The more I thought about that phone call, the less real it felt. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was someone else. But then I remembered her laugh. Not loud, not clear, but faint and broken, like it used to sound when she tried not to wake the baby. That laugh had been mine once. No one else in the world could have sounded like that. It was her. Around noon, I tried to call the number back. My fingers shook as I dialed. The sound of each click on the rotary made my heart pound. When the line connected, a voice came on. An automated message. "We're sorry. The number you are trying to reach has been disconnected." That was all it said. I called again. Same thing. I hung up, dialed again. Still nothing. The finality of it hit me like a hammer. It was over. Whatever that was, whatever she wanted to say, it ended the second I heard those words. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The old fan spun above me, slow and steady, like time mocking my stillness. I thought about calling my son, but what would I even say? That his mother had faked her death and called me from the grave. He hadn't spoken to me in years anyway. He moved away, built his own life, probably told his kids I was gone too. No one would believe me. And maybe that was better. Some truths are too heavy to pass on. As the day went on, the house seemed to shrink. Every sound felt louder. The ticking clock, the refrigerator hum, the floor creaks, all of it pressed against me. My chest hurt. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my shirt, trying to breathe. I thought maybe I was having a heart attack, but it wasn't pain from the body. It was from the heart, the kind of hurt doctors can't fix. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked outside, barefoot, onto the porch. The air was cold, the ground wet from the night's rain. I looked down the road where her car used to disappear on her way to the store. I remembered standing there in 1975, waiting for headlights that never came. I felt like I was back there again, frozen in the same spot, watching the same darkness. I sat on the porch steps and watched the sky fade. The streetlights flickered on one by one. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I thought about that river, the one by the bridge where I lost her. I hadn't been there in years, but in my mind, I could still see the water moving. I could still smell the rain. I could still hear the sheriff's voice telling me to go home. But this time, there was no home left to go to. The truth had broken something in me that death never could. Death leaves you with sadness. Lies leave you with nothing. I felt empty, like a shell. The kind of emptiness that doesn't heal with time. It just settles inside you, quiet and permanent. I looked at the phone through the window, still sitting there on the table, and I wished it would ring again, even if it was only to hurt me more. Because at least then, I'd know she was still out there, and I wouldn't be the only ghost still waiting. That night, the phone didn't ring again. I sat by it for hours, staring at the silent receiver, hoping, maybe, just once more. But nothing came. The silence was louder than any voice I had ever heard. I wanted to believe she would call again, to explain more, to tell me it wasn't true, that the words she spoke were only some strange dream. But morning came, and the truth stayed. The house looked the same, yet every inch of it now carried a ghost that wasn't hers. It was mine. I felt like the one who had died that night, and she was the one who kept on living. By afternoon, I couldn't stand the waiting anymore. I picked up the phone and dialed the number one last time. I knew it by heart already, each click slow, heavy, deliberate. When the machine spoke, it was the same message. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed has been disconnected." I hung up, then dialed again, as if repetition could rewrite fate. the same voice, the same words. I listened to that cold tone until it ended. It was strange how a few recorded words could sound more final than a funeral bell. I walked to the living room window and looked outside. The small American flag I'd kept on the porch since my army days fluttered weakly in the wind. The neighborhood was quiet. Kids on bicycles, mail truck passing, a dog barking somewhere down the block. Ordinary life kept moving while I stood there holding 50 years of stillness. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't pause for anyone. It just lands, sharp and permanent, and keeps going. The air smelled like rain, but it never fell. I turned back to the table where the phone sat beside her photo. I picked up the frame again and looked at her eyes. The more I stared, the less I recognized her. It was the same face, but the warmth was gone. Maybe it had never been real. I thought about how many times I had spoken to that picture, how many nights I had told it goodnight like a fool. I felt old, not in years, but in soul. Some kinds of heartbreak don't age, they just grow quiet and heavy. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, though my hands were shaking so badly that half of it spilled on the counter. I leaned against the sink, watching the droplets slide down. That's how I felt, like something slowly slipping away that couldn't be held anymore. I remembered the way she used to laugh when I'd spill something, saying I was clumsy. Now there was no laugh, no voice, no forgiveness. Just an empty house and the echo of what could have been. As evening came, I went to the porch again. The sky was red and orange, the kind of sunset we used to watch together every summer evening. I thought about all the times I sat there waiting for her car, thinking she might drive back someday. Every light in the distance had once felt like hope. Now, every one of them felt like a reminder that she never would. The road stretched on, long and straight, the same road she took when she disappeared. It led out of town, past the hills, all the way toward the state line. Maybe toward Florida. Maybe toward that man. It didn't matter anymore. The night air grew colder, brushing against my skin like time itself. I sat there for hours, listening to the crickets, the distant hum of cars, the faint ringing in my ears that never went away. For the first time, I didn't wait for the phone. I didn't wait for anything. I had already received my last call. I realized then that sometimes closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from silence. I went back inside and turned off the light. The house was dark except for the glow from the street outside. I sat in my chair, the same one by the phone, and whispered to the empty room, not out of hope, but out of habit. Good night. The word hung in the air, unanswered. I thought of how she said she wore another ring, one that looked like the first. I wondered if she still wore it now. I wondered if she ever thought of me after hanging up. I don't know how long I sat there before sleep came, but when it did, it was the first peaceful sleep I'd had in years. Not because I was free, but because there was nothing left to wait for. The phone stayed silent, the road stayed empty, and the truth finally stayed still. It's been weeks since that night. The phone hasn't rung once. I've stopped sitting beside it, stopped checking the line, stopped waiting for something that will never come. The days move differently now. Slower, emptier, quieter. Morning light creeps in through the same window she once stood by, but it doesn't feel warm anymore. The dust on the furniture seems thicker, the air heavier. I still live in this same small house on the edge of town, surrounded by cornfields and silence, somewhere in the middle of America, where people forget you once they stop needing you. The grocery clerk still says hello, the mail still comes, the neighbors still wave, but everything feels far away, like I'm living behind glass. Sometimes I walk down to the post office or sit on the bench near the diner, just to see life happening around me. Families come in, laughing, ordering pie, holding hands. I used to sit there with her once. The same counter, the same blue cups, the same smell of coffee and rain. I can still see her reflection in the window when I close my eyes. But now when I open them, there's nothing. Just strangers living lives that still have color. Mine faded long ago. I've thought about what she said that night 1,000 times. Every word, every pause, every breath. I never died. That sentence became a kind of ghost that follows me everywhere. It's strange. I lost her once to death, and once again to truth. The first time I mourned her. The second time, I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I couldn't carry the weight anymore. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't kindness. It's surrender. It's the moment you stop fighting the past and let it settle into you like an old scar. I used to think love could survive anything, that time, distance, even death couldn't destroy it. But betrayal is different. It doesn't end you all at once. It unravels you quietly, piece by piece, until you don't recognize yourself anymore. When she left, she took more than my heart. She took the man I was. What's left now is someone who still makes 2 cups of tea out of habit, still looks toward the road when headlights pass, still keeps a photograph turned face down because it hurts too much to look. Some nights, when the wind hits the house just right, it sounds like the phone is ringing again. I get up, half awake, and walk toward it before I realize it's only the wind moving the cord. But I still pick up the receiver sometimes just to hear the dial tone. It's the only sound that reminds me I'm still here. The living get forgotten faster than the dead. That's something I've learned in old age. People stop calling, stop visiting, stop asking. And before long, the only thing that remembers you is the house itself. The walls, the chair, the phone, the echoes. I still go to the bridge once a year. The one where they said her car went over. The guardrail's been repaired now, the road widened, new signs put up. The world keeps fixing itself while the people in it fall apart. I stand there with flowers I buy from the gas station, not because I believe she's there, but because I need to put them somewhere. I drop them into the water and watch them drift downstream. It's not for her anymore. It's for me. It's the only way I can let go, even if I never really will. They say time heals everything, but time doesn't heal. It teaches you how to live with the wound. It teaches you how to walk without leaning on what's gone. Some mornings I wake up and forget for a few seconds that she ever called. Then I remember, and it all comes back like a tide. I don't curse her. I don't hate her. I just wish I never picked up the phone. Because before that call, she was still my memory. Now she's just a truth I can't unhear. I lost my wife in 1975, or I thought I did. Then I lost her again in 2025, not to death, but to honesty. And that was worse. Death takes someone away. Truth shows you they were never really yours. Final thought. Sometimes silence is mercy. Sometimes knowing is the cruelest thing of all.